Hello and welcome to BERYL Elites. I'm Maxine Hoover with the BERYL Consulting Group. Today we're joined by Bryan Stern, a multi-tour combat veteran and the founder of Grey Bull Rescue. With over 25 years of experience in military intelligence and rescue operations, Bryan has dedicated his career to extracting civilians and vulnerable populations from some of the most dangerous conflict zones on the planet. As a first responder at Ground Zero on 9/11 and a pioneer in private sector humanitarian extractions, he leads Grey Bull Rescue's mission to provide specialized logistics and life-saving recovery where traditional infrastructure fails. He is a recognized expert in tactical operations and an outspoken advocate for the safety of Americans and allies abroad. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, what does a typical Grey Bull extraction or rescue operation look like from start to finish?
I love this question because there's nothing typical about what we do. We're not Warzone Uber. We've just completed our 809th mission as about a week ago. Not a single one of them are identical. Not one. They're every single one of them is a little bit different. The way we do airplanes in Afghanistan is different than the way we do airplanes in Jamaica. The way we break people out of jail from Russia is different than the way we do hostages from Gaza. So we've done it all. One of the things that I love about what I do is that no mission is the same. They all kind of have a relative format, meaning there is someone stuck somewhere and they need to get from where they are to where they need to be, via some way. Sea, air, land. We've done everything from helicopters to airplanes to boats. I towed a guy once on a luggage cart who had his legs shredded, all kinds of stuff. But that really is the only commonality, is someone in a bad spot, in a bad location that's hard to get to, and they need to get from where they are to where they need to be somehow. Generally speaking, we're the last resort. We are very rarely the first call that anybody makes. Usually people call the State Department or the FBI or their congressmen or senators or friends and family and all kinds of things. One way or the other, if they're talking to us, almost always, almost 8,800 people later, the conversation usually starts with, I called the State Department and they can't help me, or I called this one and they can't help, and I'm really in trouble, or my mother or my father's in trouble. We've called everybody. Is there anything you can do? That's usually how it starts. So all of our work starts off usually from a point of weakness, from a point of desperation. From a resource perspective, we're always the weaker party. From a threat perspective, we're always the weaker party. We are not as big as Hezbollah or Russia or the gangs in Haiti or Mother Nature. We're never the big dog in the fight, but we are tiny but mighty.
Right. So, how do you verify incoming requests, assess threats, and decide whether to deploy?
There are three things that we need to greenlight an operation, and this is literally how we do it. Number one is we need a requirement. We need an American citizen or an ally. We'll do allies too, but we are donor funded, so our money goes to American citizens. We need someone in trouble. We need a problem to solve. So that's number one. And that problem has to meet a certain threshold. That threshold is usually a blue passport holding American who's in a war zone or a conflict zone or is kidnapped or held hostage or something. We're not a tourist company. So if you call me and you say you can't afford a ticket from Sweden, I say, I'm very sorry. That's not for us. So that's number one. Number two is I need to know that we can do it. We have a 100% success rate. We don't really start anything that we can't finish. So if you call Grey Bull Rescue and you say help and we say we're coming, pack, because you're coming home. We're better than Jesse Jackson. So I need to know that I have the team that's able to do it, the resources, the placement, the access, the intelligence, the ability to get into the place, either where we can get in or we have friends that can get in and be able to actually conduct the tactical operation, the actual movement pieces. And number three is the resources. Helicopters cost money, airplanes cost money, cars cost money, gas costs money, plane tickets cost money, intelligence cost money, visas cost money, border fees cost money, gas. People don't realize in most war zones, gas will increase by at least 10 orders of magnitude the first day of conflict. In Sudan in 2023, pardon me, gas was $141 a gallon.
Wow.
And we had 20 buses filled with people that had to drive 13 hours. Start doing that math, all of a sudden gas becomes a really big problem. So those three things, a validated requirement, the ability to actually do the operation, and also the financial means to be able to do it. And as a donor funded outfit, we don't charge people money. So we need to know that our donors have been helpful, that the public has been helpful.
Absolutely. So how do you build and maintain trusted intelligence networks in high-risk regions?
This is like asking, how does a watch work? The number one way is through experience. The constant battle of intelligence versus experience, right? General Patton said enthusiasm doesn't equal competence, right? This is kind of the same thing, is that you could be real smart, but if you have very little experience, you're not going to do well in my world. Certainly. My team and I are very experienced globally. There's not many places that we haven't been or touched. We have friends everywhere. That's based off years of relationships in parts of the world where handshakes matter, where past performance matters, where eye contact matters, where having cups of tea matters, having dinner with a family matters. And we've done all those things for decades and decades and decades, over 1,000 years of collective experience on my team. We've been a lot of places, done a lot of things, and with a lot of people. So how do we develop those networks? Extremely carefully. And a good example of this, Abu Nasrallah, who is the leader of Hezbollah, he was the Osama bin Laden of the Shia world. Osama bin Laden was Sunni and ran al-Qaeda. Abu Nasrallah ran Hezbollah, which is Shia. Osama bin Laden himself in his writings talked about how he wanted to be like Abu Nasrallah when he grew up. He looked to Hezbollah as what he wanted al-Qaeda to become when he founded al-Qaeda. So Abu Nasrallah in the terrorism world was a celebrity. I'm the only American invited to his funeral.
Wow.
Now, how is that possible? Well, because when we were working in Lebanon, instead of going in as we are angry Americans, or we are tough guys, or we have big giant egos the size of cathedrals, which most people are inclined to do, and all those other good things, we approach the problem from the perspective of humility. We're allergic to hubris at Grable Rescue. That's not our thing. So we recognize that there are Americans in Hezbollah that need to be evacuated. We don't really care why that is. The war part is not our concern and not our problem. If you get blown up, you don't care if you get blown up by Hezbollah, the Israeli Air Force, or whoever, frankly. What you know is that things are falling from the sky and you don't want to be there anymore. That's what you know. That's all you care about. So when we approach some of the power brokers in Lebanon, from the perspective of there are Americans here that we are here to help. We don't care about the politics. That's not our problem. And in fact, we're actually here to help you. And let me explain to you why. If I'm running a bus of Americans in Lebanon and some 18-year-old Hezbollah kid shoots up that bus and kills 30, 40 Americans, that's a great way to get a U.S. military response and get the U.S. Marine Corps to come to Beirut. And when that happened the last time in the 80s, you, Hezbollah, did not like that. So I'm here to help you. We're going to run buses. We're going to do things. We're going to do maritime operations. We're going to do air operations. But the reality is we need to work together, because if we don't, then the Marines are going to come and they're going to kill everybody. And that's bad for you.
Yeah.
So I'm here to help you. And that approach resonates. It's in their interest, frankly. Now, what does that turn into me? What does that manifest itself from my perspective? Road rights, where now I have permission to operate on Hezbollah-controlled streets, where I can now operate with safety and move Americans around the battle space that previously couldn't go outside. We now have the passwords to the checkpoints. We can mark our vehicles a particular way, and we can guarantee the safety of the people we're trying to evacuate. The leadership of these organizations appreciated that I appreciated their problem and their sensitivities. I appreciated that I didn't come in and say, this is what you're going to do, and how about I insult you with a bag of cash? It doesn't really work that way. And not that I'm above it, but we're a nonprofit. We can't afford bags of cash anyway. So we've never transacted that way. So we have to develop unique and creative ways to develop rapport, to assess our targets, to handle them in a particular way by, with, and through their sensitivities, because at the end of the day, I am a guest on these streets and Americans are in my care. I'm personally responsible. More importantly, my team and I are there. So we have a very large vested interest in the success of an operation, because I will be on the bus that gets shot up. So I really want to make sure that everything's okay. And that's one of the secret sauces to Grable Rescue, is that we put our own skin in the game. And that really inspires us to do a good job.
That's so great. What does your team look like from recruitment to training to operations, and what skills are essential?
Maturity and integrity are the big skills. Learning how to do this is experiential. You could be master CIA case officer for 30 years and not know how to do this. You don't learn how to do this stuff as a Navy SEAL. You don't learn how to do this stuff as a Green Beret. That's not where you learn this stuff. I'm a counterintelligence specialist. In the counterintelligence world, those skills are the most applicable. And I focused on denied areas, unsupported operations, and commercial operations for my career, which is a fancy way of saying I spent my whole career without a lot of help. Being able to operate without a base, without a fob, without close air support, without all the bells and whistles and tools and toys and all the gadgets and gizmos that the military and the intelligence community are so used to having.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing how to operate without all that stuff is really important. And the best way to think about that is to think about it like an attorney, right? Lawyers have been around for 200 years in America. If I went to my attorney today and I told him I want to file a suit against whoever, and this is why, my attorney would go onto his computer, or he would send a text message to his paralegal, who would go onto their computer,
Mm-hmm.
and they would go and do some research from their phone, and then get that into their computer, probably dump it into ChatGPT, and poop out a whole series of documents and everything else, right? 200 years ago, that same process existed. The same task existed, except you had to go to the library.
Yep.
And you had to write with a pencil,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to drive messages from here to there. Well, the legal profession and the principles of constitutionality and evidentiary sustainment have not changed in 200 years in America. But if I went to my lawyer and I stripped away his laptop, I took away his phone, I took away his ability to email his paralegal, I took away his pen, and I took away his computer, and I gave him a pen and a piece of paper, all the data is still out there. Libraries still exist. But I promise you, my lawyer would not be anywhere near as effective. We fight the old school way, which always works.
Yes.
In the military today, they are just now, after 20 years of fighting enemies who don't have socks, who think that plumbing is a novel idea,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Right? Who have heard about this thing called TV and the internet, but don't exactly know what it does exactly, right? We've been fighting that kind of enemy for 20 years, where frankly, we had the upper hand in every possible way that there is. Today's enemy really knows what plumbing is. They really know.
Mm-hmm.
They really know. So what does that mean? In the Army, they just now started teaching land navigation again, how to use a map and a compass. We haven't had to use those skills because of GPS. Why would you? We have GPS. Why do you need to learn this stuff? It's so old and antiquated. Why would you need to learn that? Well, if you go to Ukraine, Gaza, Israel, Iran, Russia, Syria, those are GPS denied environments where GPS doesn't work. So how do you navigate?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not trained in the old school way, you are combat ineffective. My team and I, how do we do what we do? We look to very, very, very old tactics, but just because it's old doesn't mean it's no good. And while the bad guys, we just went through this with Maria Machado, a very famous operation that we did.
Mm-hmm.
We know how the bad guys target. We know they look at signals intelligence. We know they look at electronic spectrum. They look at RF energy in the space. They're looking at cell phones, looking at transmissions, looking at emanations. Well, if you understand how all that stuff works and you can walk between the raindrops, you can not do those things. Now I can walk between the raindrops and not get caught. In that operation, we were the 6th attempt. 5 other very well-resourced and very capable teams tried and failed. Why?
Yeah.
Why? And a lot of people got killed doing this, and a lot of money was spent, right? I did this with 2 men.
Wow. And what did you do differently?
We just went old school. But we fight very much the way old school terrorists fight, right? Where we use couriers. We're very careful about what we transmit. We're very careful about how we transmit. We do a lot of deception. So we'll put things out deliberately. We did a very large deception operations for Maria Corina Machado, which was central to the success, where half the Venezuelan intelligence service thought we were going by land to Colombia, because we knew she was being hunted for 7 months. She was to Maduro what bin Laden was to us. So we know that they're actively looking for her. We also know that the Maduro regime was very upset that she got the Nobel Prize. We also know, like the whole world knew, that the Nobel Prize was on a Wednesday, and that she has to get, the bride has to get to church. There's a date and a time and a place where she needs to be.
Yep.
So there's a window of when she's going to be leaving, and we know that they know that, and we know that we know that they don't want that to happen. So they're on the streets starving for information, doing anything they possibly can. They were spending up to $1 million a day at its height to find her. A lot of money. So what do? We found some people that we knew were reliable sources for Venezuelan and Cuban intelligence.
Okay.
And we fed them, because they're starving, we fed them little morsels, right? If you imagine you're starving and I give you a packet of ketchup, you say thank you. If you haven't eaten in a month and I give you a little packet of ketchup, it's going to be the best meal you ever had. Well, kind of like that. They're starving for information. We know it, and we know why, and we know what they're after. We know their requirements. So we fed them a little bit through a few different means. Now, they believe that they're intelligent. If a reliable source tells you something, that's why it's called a reliable source. They believe that. The problem is that was a figment of my imagination. So knowing that they're hunting and knowing that they're starving for information, feed them a little bit, they're going to react. And that's exactly what we saw. We've done this kind of thing, hundreds in it. We did this against the Russians. We did this against Hamas. We did this against the PIJ. We've done this against all kinds of groups, because the reality is they're aggressively pursuing, they're aggressively hunting, they're aggressively defending, whatever it is. And people all have bosses, and everyone's got intelligence coming in and information. And a guy that I know told me, and this guy who I know, how many times have we heard that? Well, Grable Rescue is not Crash and Bang. We're not Black Hawk Down. We're not Lone Survivor, right? We're more like Ocean's 11.
I see. Yeah.
We're more like that, where the Venezuelans today can't figure out how Maria wound up in Norway. I'll go you one better. Maria herself doesn't know how she wound up in Norway. She's just a passenger. She doesn't know the workings of how we did it. Why would she? I don't know Maria. I don't trust, not to be disrespectful, but I don't trust Maria. She's right. So what she knows is she was told to be at a particular place at a particular time to get into a particular car. After that, she goes to a mousetrap that spits her out in Norway, where she gets a Nobel Prize. How all that worked, she herself has no idea.
Wow.
Why would she?
Yeah, exactly. Incredible rescue mission. Actually, I've had a look at that actually right before this call. Really amazing. From one mission in Afghanistan to 800 plus across 70 countries in 5 years. What is next for Grable?
We pray for peace. We're an organization that really doesn't want to get called, right? We're like the fire department. A good fireman doesn't hope that people burn their houses down. A good fireman hopes that people don't play with matches.
Yes.
Right? We're the same way. What's next? The world is more complicated today than it's ever been. There's active conflict in every region of the world, which is a real problem. The Middle East is on fire again. Europe is still on fire. South America and Western Hemisphere is on fire. Africa remains to be problematic and coming soon to a theater near you. Asia is going to go sideways. So I'm a C+ student, but that sounds like the whole world where I'm from. Americans are more at risk today than they've ever been. That's no one's fault per se. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the reality is the world is incredibly dangerous, in particular for American citizens. So therefore, our demand, the demand signal for our work is high. We went from Mexico. We were home for 4 hours before we deployed to the Middle East when the Ayatollah got killed. We landed at night from Mexico, and we were in the air in the morning to the Middle East, and then stayed there for 5 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. Conducting operations. So the other part that Grable is doing is we're launching a for-profit business. The for-profit business is very simple, is that our reputation is second to none in this space. We do, frankly, when we compete with the government,
Hmm.
we overwhelmingly win. Maria Machado is a good example of that. The U.S. government tried to do that, tried to get her out and could not, whereas we could and did. We have many, many, many operations like this where they tried and couldn't. Our credibility is kind of overwhelming, frankly. It's a little extreme. Because of that, businesses have started to come to us and say, we want your help. We want your help. We have people, we have a duty of care for our citizens in this place or that place and everything else. Historically, we've said, well, make a donation and we'll help. Well, the philanthropy people of Google are different than the security people of Google, and they
Hmm.
don't always get along with the security people of Google. Not that Google's a client, but as an example, as a metaphor, if the security people of Google go to the philanthropy people of Google and say, write $1 million check because it's going to cost $1 million to the operation, the philanthropy people say, well, we're out of Schlitz. We've already done our philanthropic stuff for the quarter. Call us in 4 months. And the security people say, no, 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 we need it now. And this fight happens. So we came up with the idea of having a for-profit business also called Grable Rescue Group. It's the same capability, if not more. The difference is that as a foundation, as a nonprofit, everyone gets to grade my homework. We have a level of transparency that we maintain because we're a nonprofit. As a for-profit business, we're able to be discreet. That's
Hmm.
the big differentiator. No one gets to know who our clients are, and our clients usually don't like to know that they're in trouble. And it's kind of no job too small, no fee too big, anytime, anywhere. Many companies subscribe to different kind of rescue services and all these different medevac places and all that stuff. We kind of laugh at that a little bit because every one of those companies have called us, which is
Hmm.
really funny. And every one of those companies have force majeures and exclusion clauses that say things like acts of war, acts of God in it. Well, generally, that's exactly when you need your policy. It's precisely when you need it the most.
Hmm.
So, a good way to think about us is we start where they end. We
Hmm.
do everything that all those people do. Most of what they do, we do for free. As just a gimme stuff. So if you're skiing in Guatemala and you're skiing in Chile and Patagonia, and you sail into a pine tree and you break both your legs and you need to be medevac from Chile to DC or wherever, we charge that at cost. We don't even make money on that because that's like text message level junior varsity, kind of not really interesting to us, frankly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a
Where
different type of thing too.
yeah, we do it all the time, and it's kind of we do that's almost like a favor for us.
Hmm.
It's not even a thing. But on the harder things, places like Israel, where airspace closes, borders close, lots of American businesses have people in Israel that need to get out, and they can't. How do you know? The State Department couldn't get people out. We did hundreds of missions, hundreds, buses, planes, boats. Did a cruise ship once. All kinds of stuff. Those kinds of things where people are stuck, and State Department says, sorry. As well, we told you to leave and you didn't leave. Well, who cares? I'm stuck here.
Right.
When you call 911 and you say your house is on fire, the dispatcher doesn't say, well, did you pay your taxes? Or, did you vote for the mayor? Or
Right.
were you playing with matches? They don't ask a lot of questions. They say, what's your
Right.
address? We're
Have
on
to
our
go.
way. Like that's very much how we approach these problems. I don't really care why somebody gets stuck as long as they weren't criminals. If you're an American and you're trading kiddie porn and you get arrested in Thailand, I ain't helping you. That's not for us. Call a
Yeah.
lawyer. That's not for us. If you're kidnapped by a criminal element or by a terrorist organization or by a cartel, by all means, call us and we'll take care of it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the work you're doing is incredible and very inspiring, and we're very grateful to have you give us your time today.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Bryan, and thank you to everyone here tuning into BERYL Elites.
Thank you so much. Don't forget, grablerescue.org. We are donor funded. So if you're listening, you are a donor. And I'll tell you, I cannot tell you how many donors have become recipients of our greatness. Hundreds of them, where people will say, I can't believe this happened to us. So if you're listening to this, please go to grablerescue.org and donate. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Bryan.
Thanks.